1.3 Comparative Advantage and Trade. Anytime an individual, a company, or a country decides to use a scarce resource to produce one thing, they give up the opportunity to produce something else. The construction worker doesn't try to build houses, make his own shirts, fix his car, and teach his kid economics. He uses the money he makes at work to go out and trade for everything else that he needs. Companies and countries act in the same way. And today we'll learn about specialization and trade. Absolute versus comparative advantage. First, let's learn a simple concept called absolute advantage. This is when a person or a country can produce more of a good than someone else using the same amount of resources. For example, imagine Steph Curry during a 60-minute basketball game. He can score way more points than the team's equipment manager, but let's imagine that he's also really good at filling up water bottles. In other words, he has the absolute advantage in both tasks. But here's the question. Should the coach actually have Steph Curry spend time each game filling up bottles? Of course not. And if that happened, the coach wouldn't be coached very long. And now we're getting at the idea of something called comparative advantage. Comparative advantage means that one person or company or country is able to produce something at a lower opportunity cost than another. So even though Steph Curry can do both jobs better than the equipment manager, it makes sense for him to focus only on scoring while someone else handles the bottles. And this logic applies not just to basketball, but also to countries. Comparative advantage explains why nations trade with each other and why both sides can end up better off when they specialize in what they do best. Output and input problems. On the AP exam, there are two types of comparative advantage questions that you might see. Output problems show you how many units can be produced in a certain amount of time. To find the opportunity cost for an output problem, you can use the formula the other over itself. In this case, we have two countries, Mexico and the US, producing two goods, apples and corn. To find Mexico's opportunity cost for producing apples, we take the other number, 16, and divide it by the figure for apples, which is 4. That tells us that Mexico's opportunity cost for producing 1 ton of apples is 4 tons of corn. Now we need to compare that to the US. For the US, their other number is 20, and the number for apples is 10, giving them an opportunity cost of 2 tons of corn for every 1 ton of apples. So who has the comparative advantage in producing apples? In this case, it's the US. They give up fewer tons of corn for every ton of apples that they produce. One trick here is that if a country has the comparative advantage in producing one good like apples, the other country will have the comparative advantage in the other good. One country can't have the comparative advantage in both. The other type of question that you might see is an input question. These questions show you the amount of resources, like time, needed to make 1 unit of something. To find the opportunity cost for an input problem, you flip the formula that we used earlier. Suppose we have two countries, Canada and Brazil, producing two goods, wheat and coffee. Let's figure out who has the comparative advantage when it comes to producing coffee. It takes Canada 4 hours to produce a single unit of coffee and 8 hours to produce a unit of wheat. We take 4 divided by 8, and it gives us an opportunity cost of 1/2. That means that in the time it takes Canada to make 1 unit of coffee, they could have produced half a unit of wheat. It takes Brazil 2 hours to produce a unit of coffee and 6 hours to produce a unit of wheat. We divide 2 by 6 for Brazil, and it gives us an opportunity cost of 1/3. Comparing that to Canada, we can see that Brazil gives up less wheat for every unit of coffee that they produce. And that means they have the comparative advantage when it comes to coffee production. So there you have it. In this lesson, we reviewed the concepts of absolute advantage, comparative advantage, and we looked at how to solve output and input style questions. Make sure that you complete the comprehension questions, and I'll see you in the next lesson.